I'm Roby Brock. Welcome to this week's edition of Talk Business and Politics. Here's what's on this week's agenda. Senator Tom Cotton, he stirred the conversation on the Obama administration's negotiations with Iran. Has anything changed, though? And what could happen next? Senator Tom Cotton is our guest. A 7-year-old mystery gets a new twist. The remains of Little Rock businessman John Glasgow have been discovered at Petit Jean Mountain, where his car was left in 2008. What do we know now? We'll explore. And from the state capitol, bill filing season ends. Lobby Up's Bradley Phillips runs through the numbers, and our political roundtable discusses the latest political controversies. Rex Nelson, Michael Cook, and Janelle Lilly join me to talk politics. Stick around for the next half hour for all of this and much more.
This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to this week's edition of Talk Business and Politics. We appreciate you being here. This week, Senator Tom Cotton released an open letter to the leaders of Iran, a letter signed by 46 of his Republican colleagues. The letter warned Iranian leaders that the president's negotiations needed congressional approval and could be undone once Obama leaves office. The reaction from the administration and Democrats was, shall we say, not appreciated. President Obama said that Republicans had a common cause with the hardliners in Iran. Vice President Joe Biden said that it ignored 2 centuries of presidents. Some said that the Republicans had violated the Logan Act. I actually caught up with Senator Cotton on Thursday afternoon via satellite from Washington, D.C. to discuss his motivation, the reactions to the letter, and where this debate may go next. All right, Senator Cotton, you have made some headlines this past week, being kind of the lead author of a letter that has gone out about your concerns over Iran. You've outlined some opposition to the nuclear enrichment program, the fact that there's a 10-year sunset being negotiated with the administration, and the fact that the Senate's not been as included in the process as you wanted it to be. Has anything changed since that letter has come out to alter that trajectory of the conversations of the negotiations with Iran?
No, Roby, I and so many other senators are still gravely concerned about the threat of a nuclear Iran. The letter that I wrote, and I persuaded 46 of my Senate colleagues to join, including every member of our Republican leadership, every Republican on the Armed Services Committee, and all 12 Republican freshmen, states basic facts of American constitutional law to Iran's leaders, that if Congress doesn't approve a deal, Congress will not accept a deal. Not now, not tomorrow, not in the future. And as you said, the proposed terms of this deal that President Obama has already foreshadowed, whatever the final terms may be, make it unacceptable. The idea that the deal would sunset in just 10 years and that Iran would be allowed to have vast uranium enrichment programs, which are a critical precursor to the bomb, make this too dangerous for the U.S., for the world to accept, in my opinion.
But has anything changed since you've written this letter? I mean, has the administration reached out to you? Have you seen a change in the tone of the negotiations? I mean, I would suggest that things are still the same as they were before this letter came out.
Well, Secretary Kerry in the Senate earlier this week conceded exactly our point. That is, the deal they are negotiating is legally non-binding if the Congress does not approve it. It's also troubling to note that if it's legally non-binding on the United States, it's not binding on Iran either. So you really have to ask, why is President Obama going down this path of negotiating a bad deal and not submitting it for congressional approval if Iran is not going to be bound by it either? That could make the deal even more dangerous. So that's been a very big development this week.
There are a lot of people who think this was obviously a publicity stunt. I mean, there was probably no consultation with the administration before this letter came out. There's no Democrats that signed onto the letter. I would suggest and be interested in hearing your opinion as to whether or not you reached out to any Democrats in the Senate. Is that a constructive way to approach foreign policy debate, is to throw an open letter out there versus have either public or private conversations, discussions, dialogue to try to advance some real concerns that you've raised?
Roby, we wanted to be crystal clear that Iran's leaders got the message. Many Iran experts will tell you that their leadership does not understand our constitutional system. Also, it's possible that they are not receiving the message in Geneva during the negotiations, or they are not transmitting the message back to Iran's leadership. So it was critical that Iran's leaders get the message that if Congress doesn't approve this deal, Congress will not accept the deal. My office did approach the offices of several Democratic senators who have expressed similar viewpoints. We didn't have any of them sign on. They're still welcome to join us. It's an open letter. Any other Republican or Democrat can join us. But I can tell you that many senators in both parties have grave doubts about the deal the president is negotiating, and they certainly believe that Congress should have a chance to weigh in on any deal.
Well, again, I mean, you suggested that you wanted the Iranian leaders to get this message crystal clear. They seem to dismiss the letter. I mean, if you look at what the foreign minister said, this kind of communication is unprecedented and undiplomatic. He said this was part of a propaganda campaign. I mean, did it really achieve the goal that you wanted it to achieve?
Roby, I'm glad you raised Foreign Minister Javad Zarif's comments, because his response to our letter proved the need for the letter to begin with. He clearly doesn't understand the American Constitution. He's clearly misrepresenting it to the senior leadership in Iran. As far as the response of other leaders, like the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei, he is a murderous dictator. He and his ilk have been killing Americans for 35 years. They are the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. I consider it a badge of honor that I and so many other of my Republican senators are being attacked by a murderous dictator like Ayatollah Khamenei.
Let's pull back to the letter here. So what happens if the agreement, the negotiations with Iran fall through? What happens if the Senate doesn't approve this, if Congress doesn't approve this? Where does the next step go from here?
As Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in his speech to the Congress, the alternative to a bad deal is a better deal. 2 years ago in the House of Representatives, I and 400 other congressmen voted to tighten sanctions on Iran, just a few months before President Obama unfortunately loosened sanctions on Iran. But if the president reaches a bad deal that we disapprove or reaches no deal at all, the Congress can move forward quickly with tightened sanctions, and hopefully President Obama will finally begin to confront Iran's drive for regional dominance, where they're already exerting regional dominance in states like Iraq and Syria and Lebanon and Yemen. So the alternative to a bad deal is a better deal, a deal that ensures the complete nuclear disarmament of Iran, not just today and tomorrow, but 10 and 15 years from now.
So do you want the administration to start over from scratch with where they're at now, or do you just want these specific things, the 10-year sunset, the uranium enrichment program, do you want those things taken out?
The administration should go back to their opening positions, which was consistent with United Nations Security Council resolutions. Iran does not have a right to enrich uranium. They don't even have a legitimate need to enrich uranium. Iran has a clear model if it wants to disarm. South Africa and Libya both unconditionally disarm their nuclear programs. As Prime Minister Netanyahu said, if Iran wants to be treated like a normal nation, it needs to act like a normal nation.
What's your next step? So how do you go from here? I mean, are you going to issue another public letter? Are you going to just make the rounds on talk shows like this? Or how are you going to try to constructively advance your concerns with the administration and what's being negotiated beyond what has happened and transpired this week?
Well, I'm going to do everything I can to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. I'm going to do everything I can to ensure that the world, that the United States does not face that kind of existential threat.
But what does that involve, Senator? Yeah.
That includes speaking out, as I and 46 other senators have this week, against the idea that Congress won't have any say in this deal. Pretty soon, March 24th, the new deadline for this round of negotiations, many Democrats in the Senate have said if there is no deal by that point, they would support sanctions legislation, on which I've been working, not just this year, but for the past 2 years. There's also legislation that would require time for Congress to review any deal and potentially have an up or down vote. I'm going to be working on that legislation as well, in addition to speaking out against the threat to the world and to our children of a nuclear Iran.
And that is Senator Tom Cotton. You can catch a full replay of that interview at our website at talkbusiness.net. Now, after the break, a missing Arkansas businessman's skeletal remains were found this past week. We'll review the facts surrounding the mystery of John Glasgow. And our political roundtable drills into some of the political controversies of the last week. More when we come back. A 7-year mystery that was often fueled by speculation and conspiracy theories came to an end this week with the discovery of the remains of former construction executive John Glasgow. Had it not been for a couple of hikers bored with the traditional trails on Petit Jean Mountain State Park, we might not have ever known what happened to the former CDI employee. Of course, finding Glasgow's remains doesn't tell us how he died. At least they don't appear to offer an answer. Next week, the search for more of Glasgow's remains will resume, presumably close to where the hikers found his skull. Meanwhile, the Glasgow family is coming to terms with the fact that they'll never see their loved one again. Channel 7's Jordan Bonnke caught up with them a short time after they learned the news.
A sense of closure for the Glasgow family. The remains found at Pettigene Mountain on Wednesday were those of 45-year-old businessman John Glasgow. His brother Roger spoke for the family Thursday afternoon.
Actually, since that time that he disappeared over 7 years ago, we have received zero credible information as to what may have happened to him or where he may be.
Park officials say when two hikers found the skeletal remains of a skull, they were sent to the state crime lab. There was no evidence of any trauma to the skull. The family doesn't believe he committed suicide. Rogers said thanks to dental records provided by the family, officials were able to identify the skull found was in fact John's.
It's ongoing investigation and they are looking for more remains on that.
Rogers said foul play is still suspected and has been since John went missing in 2008. The discovery of the skull strengthens that belief for the family, hoping someone is held responsible.
We want that person to be found and brought to justice.
Well, the new findings in a once cold case answer many questions for the family.
Time has worn off some of the raw edges.
More questions have arrived.
But this event has kind of reopened the wounds.
And the family tells Jordan that the remains that were found will be laid to rest at a memorial in Howard County. Time for another word from our sponsors, and I'll be joined by Bradley Phillips of LobbyUp.com for a look at the more than 2,000 bills filed this legislative session. Don't worry, we're not going to look at all 2,000 of them, just some highlights. And later, Rex Nelson, Michael Cook, and Janelle Lilly join the political roundtable. We're back after the break. Bill filing deadline was last Monday, and nearly 500 pieces of legislation came gushing in on the final day, all told. Lawmakers filed a total of 2,190 bills and resolutions this session. In 2013, the last regular session, 2,581 bills and resolutions filed. In 2011, 2,314 bills and resolutions filed. Many of the bills filed Monday were so-called shell bills, with lawmakers filing several bills that were forwarded to committees based on their subject titles. Bradley Phillips with LobbyUp.com now joins me to talk about the tidal wave that came almost a week ago. So it just crushes everybody. I think the poor Senate and House staff's up there till like 8:30 at night, still just processing those bills to get them off.
I hear later than that. So yeah.
So what's kind of the magic part of what happens now that all these bills are filed? There's no way that they all get taken care of, but with the ones that are empty, that are shell bills, there's actually a House deadline that a lot of people don't know about.
There's a new House rule that's been implemented this year that says after the filing deadline, you've got 7 days to fill in your shell bills. So by Monday, if you don't have your language in your shell bills, they're not going to run. Now, I don't know if that means that you can kind of amend them and then amend them a little bit more and then amend them a little bit more and they'll be fine, but the actual rule is they must be amended by Monday or they're not running.
All right, let's hit some highlights of what were some of the most popular bills this past week, some things that were blowing up your website, LobbyUp.com.
Well, we broke the trend this week where bills from the media and social media, they actually drove the hits up. Again, I'm a vaping advocate, but number one was actually Senate Bill 447 from Senator Teague. That amends the definition of tobacco to include e-cigarettes. So the main crux of that bill is throughout every place in the Arkansas Code that it contains the word tobacco, you've now added e-cigarettes to that. So you don't really know the full implications.
That's a popular one. What was another one that got a lot of eyeballs?
Well, the announcement of Johnny Key as the new potential education commissioner caused Senate Bill 681 to go back on the radar. So that was, as we discussed earlier, the bill that would modify the requirements for the education commissioner.
Yeah. All right. And then you had some other ones.
Then we've got Jim Sorvillo's HB 1620, which was known as the puppy mill bill, which made dog breeders with 10 or more females register with the state of Arkansas, imposed inspections and fines and things like that.
You got to tell me, somewhere in the mix there had to be something about the Ten Commandments monument that Senator Jason Raper wants
yes,
in there.
there was Senate Bill 939 by Senator Jason Raper of Conway, and that was known as the Ten Commandments Monument Act, in which it says the Secretary of State may permit a Ten Commandments monument, and then listed exactly what the Ten Commandments were and so forth.
All right, that's good stuff. Bradley Phillips with LobbyUp.com. I know you've had a long week this week.
It's
we
been a very
appreciate
long
you
week.
being here with us, so get some rest between now and Monday, all right?
Thank you, Roby.
All right. When we come back, we're going to talk politics across the political spectrum. Our roundtable this week includes Rex Nelson, Michael Cook, and Janelle Lilly. I'm Roby Brock. We're back after this. Welcome back. I'm Roby Brock. It is now time to talk politics at our roundtable. Joining me from left to right here, at least for me, is Rex Nelson, Political Animals Club president, KATV's lead Capitol reporter Janelle Lilly, and Michael Cook with Cook's Outlook, whom you can catch at talkbusiness.net. Catch your stuff there too. Yeah. Because you're right in there as well.
Absolutely.
And your stuff's there too. Man, we're dominant. We're dominant. All right, before we go talk about the week that was in Arkansas politics, I want you to plug what you got coming up with Political Animals Club this next Tuesday.
Got the House Speaker for St. Patrick's Day breakfast, so wear your green and come out good and early. You'll be green with envy if you don't come to this meeting.
Will there be beer there that early in the morning?
No, there will be orange juice and coffee.
There went viewership and there went attendance
right 7
there.
7 o'clock at the Little Rock Club.
You should have done happy hour.
For those of you who get up early.
Yeah. All right, let's cut to the chase. We had a busy week in politics. Let's begin with the Representative Justin Harris saga. Why don't you bring us up to speed, Janelle, on what transpired this week?
Yeah, I mean, it started with a great article, investigative piece by the Arkansas Times, and that kind of started the cycle that spun for a little while. Essentially, it became public knowledge that Representative Harris had chosen to rehome 2 of his adoptive daughters. Now, the press for a few days tried to get Harris on the record about it. He held a press conference that Friday, spoke about it. In that press conference, levied some pretty heavy accusations against the Department of Human Services. DHS wasn't actually allowed to respond as a privacy concerns for the child and also because of the adoption situation.
And then this week we had House Minority Leader Eddie Armstrong call for him to strongly consider resigning.
Exactly. It wasn't a call for the resignation.
Right.
It was a call for him to strongly consider resigning. Governor Hutchinson said that he just wanted to stay out of it, essentially.
All right. Now, Michael, you wrote a column about this, calling on him. He needs to resign now.
It's time to resign. He says, Governor Hutchinson said, well, the facts are not all out there enough. We don't have 100% of the facts. That's correct. But I think we know enough of the facts that he put a child in danger. And his action, because he decided to put a child in a home that hadn't been vetted by adoption authorities, and then the child was horribly assaulted, you don't deserve to serve in the state legislature. It's not a partisan issue. It's just a matter of being morally right. The Democratic Party, in my opinion, the Democratic Party has called for his resignation, but nobody on the Republican side has really called for his exit from the state legislature.
What has been the perspective from the Republican side on this? It has been, let's wait and see more facts. There has been some folks rush to his defense even.
The public comments have been less wait and see. I personally believe, and they may come out and say you're wrong, but I personally believe there would be great relief inside the governor's office if he did go on and resign, because it's a distraction at this point. I mean, this has turned into a soap opera, albeit an awful soap opera because you have children involved, but with the casting out of demons and all, I mean, it has become that kind of weird, viral, internet national story at this point.
And, Representative Harris, as a result, has supported the rehoming bill that would make it a felony, and I think that's one of the reasons that the story isn't going to go away anytime soon. Not only are we learning more as the information is disseminated, but we also have an entire bill that has to go through committee and through both chambers of the House, and every time that bill moves, there's going to be another story about it.
And you raised a good point because, Harris says he supports the rehoming legislation, which would make what he did a felony. which makes it even more awkward for him to say, basically, I'm for legislation that says what I did would be
a crime.
Mm-hmm. That's awkward.
I mean, in his defense, though, knowing what happened might have been the influencer to make that, decision, knowing the end result.
I still think there's some more chapters of this story that will
I do too.
unfold, not necessarily from the Times reporting, but I mean, I hear that Justin Harris may actually release more information in the week to come that will tell more of his side of the story. We'll see if that
But there's so many strange parts to it. Again, I think it's going to continue to attract national attention, and that's why I'm saying it's a big
PETA
distraction.
just pulled their ads. They were doing a campaign statewide in Arkansas that is adoption is forever for dogs and cats was the intention behind it, but because of the national attention around this, they have pulled their ads in the state. So it is getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, so it's an awful distraction for the governor and for the House and Senate leadership all right now.
Let's talk about another topic that popped up late in the week on this week, and that is State Treasurer Dennis Milligan basically agrees that he did the wrong thing in hiring a relative. I think it was a cousin of his. He paid a $1,000 fine. But where does the story kind of stand at the end of the week, Janelle?
I think there's some questions to be answered here still, and questions that we're certainly looking into. First of all, just the agreement that there was something of a statute violated, and the Attorney General's fine of that. We have some questions whether or not there was a crime committed, right? Whether or not
a misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor.
Yeah.
But and whether or not an actual agency of law enforcement is going to look into that. Do we allow an elected official to, in some ways, be above the law if they decide not to look into it?
The prosecution can't move on the matter until an investigative file is handed over to them.
We spoke to Larry Jugley, and he said he doesn't have an investigative file, and he's not even sure what agency is investigating this. And so at this point, as far as I'm personally aware, there has not been an investigation by an actual law enforcement agency. Right now, the Attorney General is calling theirs not an investigation. I can't remember the terminology.
30 seconds. How does it matter? Does it become a big front page story?
It depends on what Janelle was saying, if it becomes investigated. But the bigger picture is this, Dennis Milligan has a reputation for doing things that get him in hot water. People predicted that he would do something. And of course, a month in, he's already done it.
Spoken like the political consultant that ran the campaign against him.
Bottom line, very quickly, we've got to, at some point, get rid of the Treasurer's office, get rid of the Auditor's office, get rid of the Land Commissioner's office. They don't need to be elected offices. We need constitutional amendments to get rid of those and go modern and have those as administrative positions.
There's still time to do it. All right. Michael Cook, Janelle Lilly, Rex Nelson, you guys stick around. We're going to do a web extra. All right. All right. So for our viewers out there, check out talkbusiness.net when we go off the air here, and you will see more of our conversation. We're going to talk about Tom Cotton as one of the big political topics this week. That's all for this week's edition of Talk Business and Politics. Thank you for watching. I'm Roby Brock. We'll see you next time.